Hockey, welcome back. Episode 15 is July 22nd. July 22nd? Yep, it's July 22nd here on the West Coast. It's still blazing hot as hell out here. I hope it's a little bit cooler for Grant Miller over in Columbus, Ohio, as always. Maybe a little precipitation that I've been missing for months on end. Let's be honest. We know why you're here. America is explosive with news right now. People want answers. What is going on with this country? And we're going to provide it to you. We know what you want. You want the preseason preview for the Bolts, the Leafs, and the Panthers. Forget all that political stuff. Let's talk about hockey, baby. Grant, do you agree?
I had 5 people text me, Grant, where's the podcast? I want to know what you think about the Bolts. The Atlantic Division's the most exciting. I disagreed with that, but listen, if that's your brand of hockey, that's your label that you want to go for, fine. Sorry it took us a little longer, but we're here and we're ready to go.
To all those fans who have been reaching out, waiting for the finish of the Atlantic preseason preview, reach out to us. Contact us, Facebook, Twitter, hardheadhockey1@gmail.com. Swag order is upcoming. It is imminent. Following a little bit of rebranding, we're going to touch it up to make sure that logo is perfect for all your t-shirts.
I'm excited for everyone to see this.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a little modern twist on our current logo. It's going to look sharp. It's going to look nice. So stay tuned for that. Question for the fans this week. All of our men's league hockey players, all of our enthusiasts, if you could create your own team, your own beer league team, what would you name them? Grant?
That's a good one. I would try to do like a pun on like the city that I'm in, maybe something that like you're known for. You know, if your city has a nickname, like my hometown of Springfield, Ohio is called the Champion City. So maybe you use that instead of just the name, or like a bar that you all like to hang out in. If you can work that into the mix, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Try to get the character of your neighborhood in there.
So on that note, I'm going to go with something around Northern California. It's kind of known for being wine country. So maybe like the NorCal Winos or the Rockland Pinots or.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
You know, something along those lines.
Yeah, then the Napa Valley Cabs.
Not the Napa Valley Cabs. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love that. Cool. Hockey Team Kaboom, train station, housekeeping, primers, hard hats, all the news that you have been craving. Hockey Team Kaboom, going right into it, is sponsored by Bush's Baked Beans. Roll that beautiful bean footage. There's no better way to enjoy the summer in this 120-degree heat than with your 4-legged companions and a side of Bush's Baked Beans. Okay, this week's Hockey Team Kaboom for Grant is dog breeds. As always, we're gonna name the dog breed, give a description, and then Grant is going to correlate that dog breed to an NHL team. Grant, are you ready?
I'm ready. This is like you get to school on a Monday and you got a pop quiz. This is that.
Yeah, and you weren't prepared. You're just walking right into it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Chihuahua. A Chihuahua is known for being a small dog, but with big personality. Typically a saucy-looking, alert dog that is sturdier than its small build would suggest. Grant? Chihuahua, often featured on Taco Bell ads in the 90s.
Yeah, and Daniel Tosh was like the comedian human that played opposite of that Chihuahua. Chihuahuas are little terrors. I get this is not fair, so I do know a bit about dogs. Picked up on this podcast, you might if you listen to this podcast, you might be able to pick up on that. They are not French in any way, but I get like a Montreal Canadian kind of French vibe for them. I get a guy that like is still smoking on like patios. He's wearing a scarf and he's got a lot of hot takes about how Montreal Canadiens are actually the best team in Canada. Something about the Chihuahua. I think like you could like carry it around with you while you like shop for wine and stuff and baguettes. So I get a Montreal Canadian with the Chihuahua.
It's a great description. If anything, the fan base is very spicy. They take a lot of pride in keeping that French language abundant in the region. So,
have you ever listened to a game with the Canadian, like the French Canadian broadcasters?
Yes,
yeah.
The Stanley Cup a couple years ago, very entertaining.
Ooh, yeah.
Circa COVID.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't mean that in disparaging terms at any point. Yeah, shout out to the Chihuahuas. Shout out to the Canadians.
Okay, we got Chihuahua is the Montreal Canadiens. Okay, Grant, next one. Beagle, a small hound dog breed that are known for being intelligent, social, and great with children. They are also popular as pets and hunters.
I very biased. I have a beagle. Everything you said there is just wholesome and good, and it's the Midwest, and it's a family environment. It's the one you want next to you as you just go through life. This is the Columbus Blue Jackets for me. I can't not pick them. I have a beagle named Boone Jenner. I feel like he is like a little brother to me as I've gone through the past 3 years of my life around here. They're very smart. The Jackets, maybe not as smart as my beagle all the time, but like social, and I go to games and people are happy. The arena's sold out, and it's just like, yeah, this is a very appealing team, and beagles are very appealing dogs. I love them dearly. So I have to kind of put my team bias in here and say they're the Columbus Blue Jackets.
I'm so glad when I was picking breeds for this, I went with Beagle because I knew that's where that was going. So
Yeah,
great answer.
You know, it's not going to win best in show. It's like a small. It's got a little bit too much of a butt there, but God bless him, dude. It's Snoopy.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love
yeah.
it. Okay, last but not least, the Labrador. One of America's most popular dog breeds. Year after year, Labs are friendly, outgoing, and high-spirited companions who have more than enough affection to go around for a family.
So I mean, one of the best breeds we've had all time, and we were just talking about teams that were like the best since the lockout. I mean, this hurts me, but I get it. This is the Pens. This is the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, just like very American, has won things, a champion. I feel like if guys or any men, women, kids of all ages, if you don't love hockey, you still have a casual understanding of who like Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin is. If you don't love dogs, if you don't have a dog, you have a friend that has a dog, and it's probably a lab. And I just feel like this has to be the Pens.
I know that probably hurts you a little bit, but yeah, it's definitely Sidney Crosby gives big Labrador vibes. So I
think
admire your humility.
Like a model dog, probably a lab. If you're building like a model player, model team, like Crosby's involved. Like it's all respect here. I'm just a beagle guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, that's going to wrap up Hockey Team Kaboom for at least the summer. We're going to give Grant a little bit of a break before we do roll it back out, before we give it its rebirth closer to when the season starts. So if you haven't noticed either, Hockey Team history has disappeared of late. It also will be making a reappearance as we get through these preseason primers. We want to make sure that we give every fan base their time in the sun. Are you ready for the train station?
I'm ready.
All aboard. Everybody get off those train tracks. We had more news than I thought we were going to have this week. I picked out some of the bigger names, starting with Daniel Sprong, played for Detroit last season, now going to the Vancouver Canucks, 1 year by $975,000. He's only 27 years old, has been very consistent, racked up 44 points in 76 games. I've got two notes here. One, that his agent is not doing him justice. Get that man some more money. He should be making more, putting up half a point a game in the NHL. That deserves you
significantly more points than I thought you'd rattle off.
Right.
Yeah.
But number two, this is where maybe the decline comes in. There's potential consistent locker room issues with this one. I can't speak to it. No, it's no fact. It is complete speculation, Twitter rumor, but also maybe a reason why he's been moved a lot in his very short career. So something to chew on there, but probably doesn't serve justice as to why he's still making less than $1 million.
Fair enough. Well, hey, for his sake, for the Canucks' sake, for his agent's sake, because we just brought him up, I hope this, kind of show me, prove it deal works. And, maybe he gets, a nice promotion after this year. Maybe I don't know, if he's a bad guy to root for, I'll take it all back. But like on the front end, let's see him do it. Hope all the best for everyone involved.
Agree completely. Speaking of heroes who are probably going to be due for a pay raise in a very short amount of time, playoff hero, third-string goaltender Artur Shilov signed a 2-year by $1.7 million deal, also to the Vancouver Canucks. He is only 23. If you do recall, he really stepped in once Thatcher Demko went down in the playoff run and played phenomenally. Pretty single-handedly lifted the Canucks to victories in that first round against the Predators. So that second round against the Edmonton Oilers, where obviously they were defeated, but still put up a heroic performance for a
Win
young
7 games.
third string goalie. This kid's got a future in Vancouver, and I foresee after 2 years quite the payday for the young man.
Third string goalies that make their way into the limelight in the playoffs, as long as they're not against your team, very easy to root for. So shout out to Silvos. Again, kind of the same deal. Hope this kind of builds some traction for the kid. Still young, 23, man.
Speaking of young, let's go out to Raleigh. Our Caniacs signed Jack Drury, 2 years by $1.7 million to the Hurricanes. Bottom six forward who can blaze a trail. Kid is very fast. Was kind of on the outs there. I know he filed for arbitration. Also requested a trade, I think 2 seasons back. So definitely a little turmoil in his time with the Hurricanes, but nevertheless, he does have a little longevity here now. 24 years old, 27 points in 74 games this past season. I like this move. They definitely need all the depth they can get given what they lost, and still with some question marks to answer before the start of this coming season. So good move by the Hurricanes. Looking forward to the Metro and those preseason primers.
Yeah, I was looking. It's kind of hard to find if you don't follow the right reporters for each market. So shame on me for not being super clued into the Canes beat writers. But I was trying to see if was this a decision that came from arbitration, or did they avoid it? We'll have to look this up because you're right. There's a lot of turbulence. I remember that trade request. I'm kind of surprised he's still in Raleigh, but I'll never root against, someone trying to make something work. But you're absolutely right. The Canes are going to get to a point where who in your bottom six is going to matter. And it's probably always mattered for a team like Carolina, but his name keeps coming up there. And I'm just man, I thought he would have been moved by now, but he's not there. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's at a certain point, he's the elder statesman in the locker room, and you're looking to him to be, a consistent part of this team.
Yeah, kind of a staple bottom six forward who maybe elevates his game with some potential gaps in the roster this coming season. So we'll see.
He's one of these guys, I've picked up on, Trent, and it's kind of taken some years to realize this. He was coming out of college and starting his pro career through COVID. And I think that is tough to get on the right foot with some guys. Cause he was coming out of Harvard. I remember there was a decent amount of fanfare out of him. And then he went to Sweden, which was kind of a wild move. I think maybe didn't get things off to the right start with Carolina. I don't know. But that's an interesting kind of generation of guys.
A lot of odd paths to the league for all those COVID season babies. all those dudes who were drafted in and around that whole time frame. It's definitely been a little odd for their progression. So I think give this one a little bit of patience and grace, and so there's a ceiling.
Good.
There's a good ceiling.
He's good, man.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, let's go up to Madison Square Garden, the Caniacs' prime nemesis at the moment. Braden Schneider signs a 2-year deal for $2.2 million to the New York Rangers. I was texting my blue shirt buddy all playoffs. I love this kid. I love this move. I think he's going to be nothing but a boon for them years to come. But it's for you, Grant, boon. He's 22 years old, 19 points in 82 games. And then I put another note here that I think is of consequence. He barely had a negative Corsi 4, which I realize is not some stat to tout, but when you are 22 years old and you're in the starting roster and you're playing defense in the NHL, if you've got a Corsi 4 that's close to 50%, that's very good for that age. It's very hard to be a young defenseman and have positive underlying numbers just because of the difficulty of the position.
Very well said. You're usually getting typically difficult matchups. It's hard for the underlying numbers to reflect well on what you're doing. But he's a big kid, man. 6'3", probably close to 210. Kind of love seeing that. Yeah, another one of these young guys, man. Getting paid.
Fly out west, Los Angeles Kings GM Rob Blake maybe gave himself a little bit of breathing room, or if anything, a chance to exhale after holding his breath for much of this offseason. Quentin Byfield signs a 5-year by $6.25 million. He's only 21 years old, had 55 points in 80 games last season. So clearly this is going to be their anchor moving forward. A lot of people are touting this deal as kind of a Nathan McKinnon-esque deal when McKinnon was starting to become that superior talent for a $6 million contract. This in a couple years might be viewed parallel as one of the best contracts in the league. Quentin Byfield will be the number one center on this team after the departure of Anze Kopitar, and Kings fans got to be excited about the value of this one.
Yeah, 100%. I think you just nailed it. It's taken second overall in 2020. You use that high of a draft pick. You're looking for someone that you can kind of build your team around, especially in that center position. All this kind of makes a lot of sense. So, you build the team. You're not quite like building the team around them. Like you said, it's kind of a contract. You're trying to buy low while you still can. But everything I've seen of him has been very impressive. Don't watch a ton. Don't get the Kings on a ton out here in Columbus, but everything I've seen of Byfield is impressive. So shout out to him. Well, these young guys, like the way the free agency works, man, it's just prove me deals for young guys or organizations looking to bolster their pipeline a little bit. So it's good to see.
He's absolutely going to be leaned on heavily this coming season for a Kings team that has a little bit of soul searching to do, and we'll get to their primer in weeks to come. Let's go to housekeeping. Let's clean it up. It's been dirty, Grant. We haven't cleaned it up in a couple of days. This place is getting filthy with dog hair. It's all over the place. It's all over the place. I can't get out of here. All right. Kick it off. Joe Pavelski, longtime USA Captain America, retires, 40 years old, played 1,332 games, amassing 1,068 points. Highly respected veteran, will be an NHL All-Star and Hall of Fame candidate. Imagine he'll be put in there. It's really a shame that he didn't get a Stanley Cup, but obviously had very respectable runs with the San Jose Sharks and the Dallas Stars. Here for Joe Pavelski.
Yeah, stick taps for Joe, a consummate professional. One of those, like you said, like you're kind of surprised he never got the cup, but it just goes to reinforce how difficult it is to win that trophy. Guys like Joe Pavelski can never get there. Then it's, amazing that anyone really does. So easy guy to root for. Hated when he came to town to Columbus because I always felt like he was getting at least a goal or an assist and was just doing Joe Pavelski stuff all around the net. Played until he's 40, man. That's not easy either. So shout out to him.
I watched him and Patrick Marleau hang six on the Avalanche in a terrible season. Saw it live, and it seemed like they were just passing the puck back and forth, and they would assist on each other's goals, and it was really annoying. Yeah. So
yeah, no, I feel like I can relate. So.
All right. Some arena news breaking out the Alberta area. Calgary Flames break ground on their new arena, kicking the tires and leaving Scotiabank. So looking forward to that. Definitely going to be a nice, fun surprise for the Calgary Flames loyal. And then out of Salt Lake City, we've got Utah. Grant sent me a picture this week showing, and I quote, 10,000 unobstructed seats. I'm not sure if that tweet was supposed to be like a popular advertisement, but I didn't love the sound of that out of the gate.
So the photo, it's an audio medium that we're dealing with here, but the photo showed a good amount, I would say almost like, I don't know the full attendance there in Salt Lake, but easily 6,000 to 8,000 seats, not fully deployed. If that makes sense. Like they had to kind of like push sections back like an old school high school basketball arena to make way for the ice and all the hardware that is associated with that. So it was kind of weird to see, but knowing what they're dealing with there in terms of like the arena setup, it makes a lot of sense. To go to Calgary real quick, I hope the taxpayers aren't getting screwed on this one because like the Saddle Dome's like one of these just historic arenas. We don't have many of these left. So if like the fans are excited, great. I remember like 5 or 6 years ago, the owner of the Flames was like, hey, we really got to do something about the arena situation. And it basically just came out that like he was basically just trying to keep up with the Joneses with Edmonton because Edmonton recently opened a new arena. like I said, 6 or 7 years ago. So I hope this turns into a nice arena. I just love the way the old Saddle Dome looks, man. It just kind of that Pringles chip shape that stadium had, and the fans out there are great, some of the best in the league. But I know it was getting older, so like I get that. I don't think this is one of those like, hey, if we don't build this, we're gonna leave sort of deals. It's, it is older. I wish that the renderings paid homage to that design a little more. Kind of what I've seen rendering wise hasn't blown me away, but if this makes Flames fans happy, I'm happy for them, because I think hockey up there is sick, and hope it works out.
It is the Saddle Dome. My mistake. I initially said Scotiabank Arena. That's my fault. It's the
Well, there's
Saddle
only
Dome.
5 companies in Canada. I almost in Cleveland. Yeah, everything's the Bell Center, Rogers Place, or BMO. There's not a lot of business up there. That's not because Canadians don't work hard. It's just an unfortunate circumstance. But the Saddle Dome, dude, it's gonna be weird not calling it that.
It does.
Seeing that.
It does bring the red and yellow wave, and those fans do deserve an awesome arena. So I hope this works out for Utah fans and for all critics of Utah. Let's be a little patient here. Obviously, this is not the most ideal situation. The picture wasn't great from our perspective, but this isn't the long-term plan. The long-term plan is new ownership is building a new arena built for the Salt Lake City hockey team. So you have that to look forward to in Salt Lake.
I think they're going to be fired up regardless. I think it's one of those, like, it'll feel really cool and interesting for the first year or two. And I'm never going to root against a fan base. I know we've talked about them leaving and how it's kind of weird, but like this might be interesting.
Absolutely. Okay, Grant, this next part is going to be rapid fire. I'm going to present what we have here are 6 veterans, basically the 6 hottest veterans without a Stanley Cup on the last year of their contract. So basically the 2 questions that are posed for each player is going to be, do they have a legit chance to win the cup or a better chance of getting moved? So just very rapid responses. I'm going to read the player, age, and team, and you tell me final thoughts. You ready?
And it's just for the cup, correct?
So do they have a legit chance to win the cup, or do they have a better chance of getting traded before the end of their last season of their contract? Okay, you ready?
Okay, all right.
Claude Giroux, he's 36, plays for the Ottawa Senators. John Tavares, he's 33, he plays for Toronto.
He's not going to get moved, but I don't like the Leafs' chance either.
Jamie Benn, 35, Dallas Stars.
He might have a better shot winning the cup.
I agree. Brent Burns, 39, Carolina.
Don't think he's going to get moved. Don't think he's going to win the cup, but I think the cup's the higher chance.
Brock Nelson, 32, Islanders.
I think he might get moved.
I don't
know what his contract looks like, though.
I can't believe they haven't moved him already, given the state of that team. I can't believe he's only 32. Jeff Petrie, 36, Detroit Red Wings.
We spoke really highly of Detroit last episode. I'm gonna say just moved.
Okay, yeah, I don't see legit chance for the cup, but make the playoffs. Yeah. Okay, our last bit of NHL housekeeping comes out of none other than Nationwide Arena. The Columbus Blue Jackets have hired Dean Evison.
Late breaking news this afternoon, Trent.
I know you were pumped.
Monday. I was having a very rough Monday. I was coming back from a little long weekend vacation. For that email inbox, just getting used to having an email inbox and a desk job, and left a lot of work for myself. And it was tough sledding. But this news came down the wire, put a little pep in my step. I got to text Trent about it.
Tough sledding. You could almost say that was blue collar sledding. Dean Evison amassed a record of 147, 77, and 27. That's 27 overtime losses in 251 games as head coach over 5 seasons with the Minnesota Wild. So head coach experience, frankly, a pretty good record for a not great roster, if we're being honest, over that course of 2020 to 2023. So I like this move, Grant. What do you think?
Yeah, so new GM Don Waddle has been very clear. He wants someone with fairly extensive NHL head coaching experience. He didn't want to go with someone young looking to break in. He wanted a guy behind the bench that knew what the kind of dog days of the NHL calendar entail. I don't think this was Waddle's first pick. I think he wanted Todd McClellan out of Los Angeles, but they couldn't reach a deal with the Kings because I feel like McClellan had an extra year. Jay Woodcroft from the Oilers was another name, but I think Dean is a great pick. Exactly what you said. He got a lot out of these Wild teams that weren't particularly great. They had a tough, like 7-game losing streak to start the year this year. And that was kind of all she wrote for him. But, he was there way longer than I had remembered. And he kind of was squeezing water out of a rock there. I know some folks online that I was talking to basically said his playoff record wasn't great, but newsflash, I don't think the Jackets are going to be a playoff team. So we just need some consistency behind the bench right now. We've gone through, I think, 5 coaches since the 2020 season. It's been a bit more tumultuous here than anyone would like. So if he's able to just kind of right the ship here, and he's got a pretty interesting style of hockey from what I've picked up. Again, you might have more experience with that as far as like what the type of team the Wild are play against, but he, like I said, he was getting a lot out of a team that probably didn't have a lot of talent, and that kind of excites me. I wanted to just see what that looks like.
And in a very tough Central Division, I don't remember the last time the Central Division was particularly bad. It's been pretty consistently hard to play in. So the fact that he got that record, that's
crazy. 147 wins versus 77 losses. That's great. I mean, yeah, if we can replicate that to any capacity here in Columbus, I think that'll start getting the organization moved back in the right direction, because it's been tough. Those fond memories of 2019, man, they're fading a little bit here. So.
And that Minnesota team had $14 million of dead cap because of the Ryan Suter and Zach Parise buyouts.
Yep.
Think about that.
That was another thing. He kind of was getting dealt a pretty raw hand, which I think he should be in a position to work with a young core and a bit of flexibility. Got a couple other things on the to-do list for GM Don Waddle. Got to figure out what we're doing with Patrick Laine. And we got Kirill Marchenko, new Russian stud, led the team in goals. We got to get him on a new contract. He's an RFA. So this was always the number one thing that we needed to accomplish. And it took a little longer than I think some fans in Columbus would want. But I think all things considered, man, considering the options on the table, it's a pretty good pick.
Yeah, it's a home run. Cool. That's going to wrap it up here for housekeeping. Let's get to the primers. Preseason primers in order. Almost done with the Atlantic Division. We got the Tampa Bay Lightning, Toronto Maple Leafs, and Florida Panthers in that order coming to you right now. The Bolts, baby, the Bolts finished 4th in the Atlantic Division this past season. GM Julien Brisebois, head coach John Cooper, one of the longest tenured, cap space available, $730,000, which now, looking back, makes a lot of sense. Had they kept Stamkos, they would have had to move one of their key forwards, probably more of a depth guy because they're not moving, the likes of Kucherov or Point, but they would have had to move a Brandon Hagel who's only 25, or potentially like Anthony Cirelli, which, those guys are younger. If you're trying to rebuild a team success, you don't necessarily want to move those pieces. Moves this offseason that were significant. So signed Victor Hedman, 4 years, $8 million. Cam Atkinson, your boy, 1 year, $900,000. Jake Gensel signs that $7 by $9 million contract, and that was acquired via a trade with Carolina. We talked about that previously. They traded Tanner Jeannot to the Los Angeles Kings for a 2nd and 4th. They traded Mikhail Sergachev to Utah for J.J. Moser, Connor Geekie, and a 2nd. Finally, they let longtime captain, future Hall of Famer Steve Stamkos walk, and we've already talked to that to full extent. So, key forwards for this season. I got Kucherov, he's 31. Braden Point, 28 years old. Gensel, 29 years old. I think those three are going to make up at least a top 5 forward line in the NHL, and they're going to be heavily relied upon. Below that, you've got Brandon Hagel, 25, as I said, Anthony Cirelli, Nick Paul, and Connor Sheary. Those guys will be looking to step up given the departure of the massive hole of Steven Stamkos. Defenseman, Hedman, obviously. Ryan McDonagh comes in. He's no stranger. He's no stranger to Tampa Bay. 35 years old, so a little bit older blue line. And then Eric Cernak, 27 years old, $5.2 million. Keys to success for me. That top forward line has to be the class and the brass of the Atlantic Division if they're going to repeat success. I look for J.J. Mosier coming over in that trade for Mikhail Sergachev. Given that departure, Mosier has to take a big step on the blue line. It is an older blue line. We mentioned the ages of Hedman and McDonagh. If there's any injury there, they've got to fill that gap quickly, and J.J. Mosier will be looked to fill that gap. The locker room chemistry is going to be a big puzzle for me. It's going to reset, and don't kid yourself, it has been shaken given the departures of key players for years, Stamkos and Sergachev. That is very volatile moves by GM Julian Breezeball, and I wonder if it doesn't take a couple months to really adapt and find their stride as really a new team.
Yeah, so I think what you said is we got to figure out how new of a team this is. Because obviously Stammer's leaving, and that's going to take some adjustment. I don't think this Tampa Bay Lightning team is, quote, going anywhere. I know I've kind of ripped on them a little bit in the past. Maybe I've questioned the validity of their cups. That's all just kind of tongue in cheek to an extent. Is this a Stanley Cup contending team? As of right now in the offseason, I would say no. I think a team like the Rangers or the Stars has a better chance of winning the cup. Do I think the Lightning are going to make the playoffs and be a really difficult team to play against and just continue to be in the mix in the East? 100%. I don't think anyone is expecting them to drop off fully, but it's going to be different. The way that we're not used to this team being different. But a lot of teams go through this. The Penguins were going through this. The Capitals have gone through this. The teams that were at one point, the class of the East fall off a bit, but it doesn't go off a cliff overnight. It's just kind of a gradual thing that you got to see how can they manage this. I think with Gensel, they're going to handle it pretty well. I think Braden Point's a great player. The thing is, their blue line is older. I think they're McDonagh. I think his style of play is still going to play, but it's just, him and Hedman aren't as young as they were, 5 or 6 years ago. And if you kind of clinch up a little bit when you see that age, I understand that. But until they show that they can't prove it on the ice, you got to count them in here.
I agree. Are you ready for my prediction?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Here's my final analysis of the Bolts. They're not as deep. They're not as deep as they were. That's no secret. They won Stanley Cups with an extremely deep roster, and we've talked about it end over end. The Stanley Cup tax bites everyone who wins a Stanley Cup. They still carry a top 5 forward line in the NHL with those three that we already mentioned. Kucherov, Point, Gensel. And they're going to score a lot of goals. That power play is going to be lethal. Yep. The Atlantic Division as a whole has only become more compressed in my eyes. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of movement north or south.
I don't think the Panthers are going anywhere. We don't, we like the Bruins. Yeah.
Yeah. If the experienced blue line, most notably Hedman and McDonagh, if they stay healthy, there's a clear path to me for them to finish third in the Atlantic Division, and they make the playoffs. As far as playoff performance, I'm not getting into that right now. That is so far down the line, but I do think this is a playoff team. I'm calling it third into the Atlantic.
Yeah, I think until they miss, I don't think you pick against these guys.
Okay, next up in the Atlantic Division. And before we start this one, I want to prep yourself. Buckle up. I may ruffle some feathers here, so I apologize in advance. Again, hard hat hockey. We're fans of all fan bases here. For the most part, we
don't want to see anyone suffer.
We support.
There's winners and losers in this.
We support the NHL as a whole. And here's the thing: I've got to be consistent as an analyst. Last week I said the Detroit Red Wings improve and make the playoffs out of the Atlantic Division. So that means somebody's got to fall in my eyes. And it was tough to pick, but I made my choice, Grant. Here we go. The Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh, wow.
They finished third in the Atlantic Division this past year. GM Coach Craig Berube, cap space, $2.5 million. That probably dries up in the seasons to come very quickly. Matthew Nyes is on his last year of that entry-level contract, which we've talked to extent before. You got to capitalize when your top-tier prospects are on their entry-level contracts because that's their highest value. Notable moves this offseason. They just signed Chris Tanev from the Dallas Stars, 6-year by $4.5 million. Joseph Woll. This is going to be the first of multiple goaltender moves. So Joseph Woll was their backup last season. He signed a 3 by $3.6 million deal. Anthony Stolarz, another goaltender, he was the backup for the Florida Panthers on the Cup run, signs a 2-year, $2.5 million deal. And then longtime veteran Matt Murray, 1 year by $875,000 deal. So clearly looking for some answers in the crease. Oliver Ekman-Larsson also comes over from the Florida Panthers, 4 by $3.5 million deal. And Max Domi, they extend 4 years, $3.75 million. Key Fords, no secrets here. Austin Matthews, $13 million. Nylander, $11.5 million. Tavares, last year of this contract, $11 million. Mitch Marner, last year of this contract, $10.9 million. Matthew Nyes, ELC. Let's stop right here before we move on. Let's talk about these forwards here for a second. Tavares or Marner? What do you think? Do you think they both are on the team by the end of the season?
Yeah, because I think if they were going to move Marner, the best time to do it would have been, I don't know. I mean, his value wasn't super high coming out of the playoffs because I think people were like questioning, if he had the grit. But I mean, the fact that they didn't move him in the offseason, I don't know how you move him in the middle. But if the bottom falls out or they look tough and they panic, then there's always options. So I just took the middle of the road of all that. I don't think anyone's going to take. And Tavares is what, at $11 million?
Yeah, but it's the last year. It's the last year of the contract. So,
Yeah, but how many teams have, I mean, cause the cap space splits in half at the end of the year, I think.
Yeah. So,
works? So, yeah.
It would have to be something significant coming the other way to counterbalance $11 million even for this season. So
the Leafs don't strike me as an organization, for better or for worse, and maybe they needed a little more of this the past, 6 seasons. A team that makes kind of cutthroat moves like this. I feel like they see this as the core, and it's like, if these are the guys that are going to get us there, they're going to get us there. And if not, we're going down with the guys that we got. And it might be too late. I think Matthews is great. I think that's a guy you build the team around no matter what. He's still young. That there's going to be multiple windows if you put good guys around him. I think Marner with the right situation is a great player. Obviously, Tavares, still got it, but for whatever reason, man, it just has not been meeting expectations.
I tell you what, at this point in those last years, I wouldn't want Tavares for $11 million. I wouldn't want Marner for 10.9, frankly. Just given the playoff performances of years past, that really scares me in terms of you're just spending a lot of money for a guy who maybe can't get it done. I love Matthew Nyes. This is a kid that has longevity. The kid's a horse, and he's going to demand a nice little upgrade here after the end of his ELC. Let's move on to the defense. You got Morgan Riley, also long-tenured Leaf, $7.5 million. Chris Tanev, we just said, $4.5. They locked up prospect Tim Liljegren, 25 years old. He signed a 4-year by $3.5 million deal. So decent moves on the blue line in terms of upgrading. Let's talk about goaltending. Here's keys to success for me. Backup last year, Joseph Woll signs that new deal. Last year, he had 25 games played, 96 save percentage, 2-1 record coming in the playoffs for Ilya Samsonov, who was the starter this past season. And then bringing in Anthony Stolarz over from the Panthers, backup for Bobrovsky, obviously. He last season had a 16-7 record, 2 goals against average. That was his goals against average. 2.
As the number 2 guy.
Yeah, which is great.
Pretty good. Yeah.
So
Hey,
I,
you take that any day.
I think some answers here in the crease potentially. What scares me is neither of these guys has really shown they can handle the weight of an 82 game season. Not that they would play all 82, but still that their role is going to increase significantly, up from 25 and 27 respectively. So we'll see how that plays out. One of them has to seize the reins in net. So it is a bit of a question mark, but I think one of them will be an answer. There is an inability to move in free agency this year due to the cap space and kind of an inability to trade unless they're willing to accept lower value. Because just like we said, the two obvious answers are Tavares or Marner, and they're going to have to accept lower value because the reality is all these big names all have no movement clauses. So because of that, they're already playing from behind the eight ball if they want to trade. And other teams know that. So
yeah, when other teams know you're in a tough position, it's kind of over. I know it's easy for me to say, it's hard. Okay, it's hard for me to say this. Jackets fan, Jackets have not gotten close to a cup either. They have never been in a conference finals where you're like, oh wow, this team's come together. The Leafs have not gotten close, and it's crazy to me. And I know there's plenty of content out there. Leafs fans know it. It's online a lot. We joke about it. We are so long into this core being the guys that I'm just shocked they haven't tried to change it. It's 2024 and we're still talking about is Mitch Marner going to be the guy? And what are they doing with the goalie position? I feel like we've just had the same conversation since 2017. It's great. I could talk about this all day, but I don't know, man. You gotta think this has to be the last year.
And because of what you just said, and I'm going to piggyback on this and I'm going to ride it home into the sunset, because of the dilemma of the Tavares contract and the seemingly endless rumors and turmoil between the Leafs and Mitch Marner and his extension or his potential trade, I think that tears the room apart. I think it's the last year of this experiment. I think they finished fifth in the Atlantic Division and they missed the playoffs. In doing so, I think disaster looms. Detroit makes that spot in the Atlantic, and this is the last year that you see this experiment. I think Tavares and Marner either walk in free agency or one of them gets moved, but regardless, I think this is the last year the Leafs fans are going to see this experiment play out. I do think there is potential answers with their goaltending moves, and I like the bringing in of Chris Tanev. I think that's something that they could look forward to in years to come, but this is not the year.
I like Matthews and I like Marner too. I don't dislike Marner. If Marner came to Columbus, I'd be stoked. But I can't believe, and the playoffs are brutal. It's thankless. You can have an amazing regular season and you can end up third or second in your division and have to play another amazing team. I think there's an organization that if they still had the classic 1-8 seeding, maybe they get a couple better breaks over the course of the playoffs. But that's just not the scenario we live in. And we're over here talking about this team every year, this year the Leafs put it together. And on paper, you think this has gotta work. And, I was in college when this all started, man. I just turned 30. The Leafs aren't, doing any more. I mean, the Carolina Hurricanes have gotten closer to a cup than they have, the Vegas Golden Knights have entered the league and won a cup within the time that we've talked about this core being threatened east.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right, let's take it down to Florida. We'll finish this up for today. We got the Florida Panthers. This past season, obviously, finished first in the Atlantic Division, went on to win the Stanley Cup. With the leadership of GM Bill Zito, head coach Paul Maurice, current cap space.
My guy.
Yeah, my guy. He's the man. Current cap space situation, $760,000. Not a lot left. Welcome to the Stanley Cup tax, Florida Panthers. Significant moves. They signed Anton Lundell to a 6-year by $5 million deal. Love that. Sam Reinhart, steal. 8 years, $8.6 million. Highway robbery, team-friendly deal. Good for them. Dmitry Kulikov, 4-year by $1.15 million, shoring up the blue line. They let Brandon Montour walk. He's now in Seattle. OEL, Ekman Larson, who we just said went to Toronto. Ryan Lomberg and Kevin Stenlund, fourth line guys. They also walked in free agency. Key forwards for this season, no strangers. You got Barkov at 10 mil, Kachuk at 9.5, Reinhardt at 8.6. And then the depth here, man, for Hagee, Bennett, and Lundell. Those three players combined, huge players in the playoffs, they combined for $14 million. That is great business by Bill Zito. Good for them.
Yeah, even with that low cap space, I don't think they're going anywhere if they can stay healthy and just keep production at a decent level. I also think this is a team, like, they don't need to be first in the Atlantic. They don't need to win the President's Trophy to compete for the Cup. I think if they get off to a slow start but have a good season, end up second or third in the Atlantic, they're still going to be in there as long as everyone's healthy. I was a little bummed out to see my guy Kevin Stenlund leave. I was a big fan of him when he was in Columbus, but like you said, Cup tax, totally get it. He's going to Utah. Yeah, so that'll be good to watch out there. But this team's not going anywhere. You know, it might be in a couple years we start talking about this team like we do Tampa. I doubt it on the front end. I think it's too early to kind of talk like that because these guys are that good. So as long as there's not too much of a hangover from the Cup parade and the party, count on the Panthers being near the top.
I love it. On defense, you got Aaron Ekblad. He's in the last year of his contract at $7.5 million. I don't expect him to be moved. I expect that to be extended. Gustav Forsling on a steal of a contract, $5.75 million. And Nico Mikkola, $2.5 million. Keys to success, Grant. If anything declined, their defensive depth took a bit of a hit. They obviously lost an entire line of defense in Brandon Montour and Ekman Larson. So they're going to look for one of their acquisitions, low cost, of either Nate Schmidt, Adam Boquist, or Tobias Bjornfoot to step up and fill that void, to take the reins of
all those guys are capable of that.
Yeah, they can all take a third line role. Any one of those guys could step in and do so proficiently. And then for Bobrovsky's longevity, he played quite a few games last season. I look for backup now. Spencer Knight, because as just noted, Stolarz went over to Toronto. So now backup Spencer Knight. I look for him to take a few more games from Bobrovsky during the regular season just to give him a bit of a break. And I think that's a big
never a bad thing. Giving Bob a little bit of a break.
Key to success there. My prediction for this team, I don't think it's going to take much. I think they are first in the Atlantic again. But like you said, even if they're not, they're making the playoffs. So good for them. They've got a good thing going here.
I hope they don't make us look silly and have a really bad year.
Well, I tell you, it was Matthew Tkachuk didn't have the biggest impact in terms of, at least on the score sheet this go around. So I wonder how he responds, if he needs to respond. Yeah. If that's what we're talking about, you're in a good situation.
Yeah. It's a long year, but I just think this team is very well built.
It is.
It's very well built. Yep.
Okay. You ready for your hard hat?
Yeah, I got it. You go ahead first.
Okay. Hard hats of the week are sponsored by Leroy's Bar. Located in the heart of Worcester, Ohio, Leroy's establishment has provided cheap pitchers and a safe haven for all of the Fighting Scots of Worcester since 1969. Make your reservations today. And let me tell you, their reservations are running out. It fills up in Leroy's, people. You need to make your reservations right now. And here's why. Because my hard hat of the week is going to Team USA Olympic athletes. Leroy's is going to be covering all of it. Fencing, judo, whitewater rafting. I made that up.
100% have Peacock, which is going to show all of the
surfing.
NBC has the right.
Karate, that weird event where the bikes are on the indoor track. And it's kind of on slope track, whatever it's called, right? Shooting.
Handball is a great summer Olympic sport.
Water polo, volleyball.
Got to shout out soccer. Soccer is under 23. It's all the young guys.
Soccer starts Wednesday. Gymnastics, all the stuff.
It would be so funny. It would, on a serious note, it would be so funny if someone shows up to Leroy's and was like, I heard you guys were showing all of the Olympics.
I heard you guys all the coverage. I'm here to make
all the guys. It's all the guys. So, fully current back a little bit. I spent probably too much time at Leroy's. and would show up there during like the afternoon, and it's the guys getting off. There's a paper mill right across from the bar, folks, if you're not familiar. And it was the guys getting off that shift during like Busch Lights. It would be great to roll up in there while all those guys are getting off work and ask to get the Olympic coverage on there. So if you're close to Wayne County, Ohio, give that a shot and report back to us.
First of all, there's no such thing as too much time at Leroy's.
No.
Second of all, it would be hilarious if somebody showed up and said, "I'm here for my reservation."
Yeah.
All right, Grant, who's your hard hat?
No, just call, get a table. I'll ride the USA wave, man. I'm pulling. I really try to, rein in my soccer love, but it's tough this time of year. Patrick Schulte, starting goalie for the Columbus Crew. He is on the U.S. Olympic team. He should be the starting goalie for the U.S. team. I got my eyes on him on Wednesday. Columbus is hosting the All-Star game for MLS, so there's soccer everywhere in the city, which is a lot of fun. Great sports town. I was just at another of the live recording for a podcast that I listened to, and we were talking about Schulte and kind of the USA soccer team. So that's my guy, St. Louis kid, American. The Olympics are such a great event. It's one of those things I kind of forget how much I enjoy them until they come around, but I'm excited to take it all in.
I love it. Yeah, it really gets me going. All hours of the day, just USA pride, baby. That's going to wrap it up here for episode 15 on Hard Hat Hockey. We love you guys. As always, look forward to next week. We'll finish up the Atlantic with the Boston Bruins and then jump right in to the Metropolitan Division. May or may not have another surprise guest on coming next week, so stay tuned for that. You don't want to miss that, people. Keep your eyes on the horizon because you never know what Hard Hat Hockey is going to be presenting for you. We're serving up fire all summer long. Looking forward to this season. We'll talk to you next week.